episode 4. Let's talk about reliability and how unreliable reliability reports are. They're the worst reports. They're horrible. What's important is cost of ownership. And let me explain why we need to stop looking at we should look at cost of ownership and put all sorts of importance on it, but we need to stop looking at reliability studies. Reliability studies will take a sample, sometimes a good sample, a big sample, and sometimes a small, very potentially misleading, inaccurate sample, but they sample and look at how many times people go to the dealership other than an oil change in a certain number of years. Often they even only look at the first year. And the most reliable will have something ridiculous like 1.7 vehicles. The least reliable will have about 2.7. The middle of the pack will be around 1.7, and then the most reliable will be at 1.2. So you're telling me the middle of the pack is 1.5 visits versus the most reliable brand is at 1.2 or 1.3 visits, and you're telling me that is supposed to be significant and important? Your visit could have been a blown motor. Heck, joke of the day coming up right here. Joke of the day. Let's find this here. Hid it away somewhere. So joke of the day. You could be going for something as simple as your Bluetooth on your phone. So many people, the Bluetooth shuts off on the phone. They blame the vehicle. They say my vehicle Bluetooth isn't working anymore. And that counts as a visit other than an oil change when they show up at the service department. Nothing was wrong with their vehicle. In Consumer Reports, in 2 years back to back, I remember in 2017 I read it, as well as 2019, page roughly 6, they even said, well, we have to admit, probably legally, folks, we have to admit that most of the visits were for electronic issues. They didn't say electronic repairs, they said electronic issues. So a lot of it comes down to people having trouble with the technology. But they're not counting, they're not weighting the difference between a blown engine or this poor schmuck, a bent frame. There's no weighting. There's no heck, if this happens often enough, they should almost be forced to stop making them. Whereas we all put so much importance when we're purchasing on reliability studies, and they're bogus, because if you went to the dealership saying something's wrong with my Ram, this counts as one of those visits other than oil change. Mind you, someone who, let's say you have a brand that sells to a lot of people who are a little older, who might have a little more trouble with their Bluetooth. If their Bluetooth is off on their phone and they go in and say the Bluetooth in my vehicle is not working, and sometimes it's just the communication has fouled between the phone and the vehicle, and you just need to delete the connection from your phone and your vehicle and then add it back in. So add your phone back into the sync system at Ford, and then everything's hunky-dory. Often it's because the Bluetooth's off. Well, that gives you a strike just as much as this piece of junk right here. And I'm not saying all Rams are a piece of junk. I'm saying that when that happens, you can say, you know what, my truck's a piece of junk for whatever reason. And unfortunately, the new Dodge Hornet, as good as it looks, TFL had it in their hands, and I guess they put the pedal to the metal and on their skid test, and every light possible lit up in the dashboard.
That's not good. But
Dodge is good at winning reliability studies. Dodge will, this many years has been, considered, it gets labeled, the most reliable truck. That's just because the people aren't even able to get to the dealership to make the complaint. You're not driving that to the dealership. You don't get that little reliability strike against you for 1.7 visits to the dealership versus, the number one brand at one. And for years it was Toyota, because they just don't have technology that can confuse people. There is no technology. Up until recently, Toyotas were just 20 years behind. So no matter, you can be 95 and say, hey, this is easy. This is easier to figure out than the VHS system. And you're like, what, VHS? What are you talking about? Yeah, video recording system. But anyways, this guy's not making it to the dealership to complain. Toyota has often very much won the reliability studies, but they had no tech in them. in the 2015s, they sometimes still had, in 2012 models, they had a little clock up top, and that was like their big technology. They had a little digital clock. So hopefully you start feeling a little better.
Yeah.
Now talking about Toyota, this one here worked at Toyota, and they're great vehicles. I love them. Everyone has their pros and cons. Toyota up until recently, boring style, very old technology. They keep their suspension and motors for 20 years. The 4Runner has a 20-year-old engine in it. People love their Toyotas, even if they're buying a vehicle that has a 20-year-old engine in it. Journalists are unbelievably kind and nice to Toyota. I don't know why it is, because journalists, especially in our area, they'll just, our French branding, they'll say, basically you're crazy if you buy anything other than a Hyundai, Kia, or Toyota. And I don't get it. Everyone has their pros and cons. Toyota never gets a hard time for being underpowered, generally, having old mechanics that are very, very, very reliable. There's your pro. Very reliable. But the con, lots of gas because it's old technology. And boring. Mind you, their styles. I love their styles now.